Makisha Boothe is the founder and head business coach of Sistah Biz Global Network, a business accelerator focused on helping Black women solopreneurs and micro businesses scale into sellable, sustainable companies. She launched Sistah Biz Loan Fund, one of the nation's first small business loan funds expressly for Black women entrepreneurs, to tackle the capital access gap and create tangible financial resources for underfunded founders. Makisha's work also spans organizational consulting and civic innovation. She's led Denver Public Schools Imaginarium and runs Pivot Innovation Solutions, focusing on organizational development, community engagement, and equity work. Her coaching and advocacy have earned regional and national recognitions, features in Forbes, Ebony, NPR, and local business press. And she's been honored with awards and inclusion on top lists for women in business and conscious leadership. Welcome. It's so good to see you, Makisha. Welcome to Second Chances with Christy Bells. I'm very excited for this call, and thank you for your flexibility today.
Thank you for the original flexibility, because
Yeah. So I start everything I do with something I call permission to pause, which just means we're going to take a minute just to close your eyes if that's how you do it, however it works for you. Close your eyes, take a deep breath. Just get yourself centered in this time, in this moment, in this place. Just to focus on that breath, just this moment to say, here I am now, here I am now. And here I am with the remarkable, amazing Makisha Boothe. Thank you so much again for joining us on the podcast today. I am so excited to have you. And I always start with, how do I know my guests? And how do I get so lucky to have these amazing women say yes to being on my podcast? And many, including you, I've known for a season of my life. And you and I call that season motherhood. Not that it's ever over, but we raised some young kids together along the way, boys to be specific. And I think they met when they were in first grade. Do I have that number right? And now they're men, 25 years old.
oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, that's right. And is D over 6 foot? He's got to be 6'3". Yeah,
And then Charlie's, what's Charlie, like
6'5".
5 or something? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So mama of baby boys, girl, raising them, and just, yeah, what a season. What a season.
I saw this Instagram video, and it starts off with a mama lion and a little lion, and she's like, me and my son, and then it fast forward to him being grown, and it's this big lion by this little mama lion.
Yeah, that's how I feel next to Charlie. I'm like, what happened? And in a lot of ways, not just physically. He is, yeah, he's doing great. Is D in LA? Where is D now?
He lives in Chicago now. He is attending Northwestern.
Does Charlie know that? Charlie's in Chicago.
What?
Charlie's in Chicago.
I'm writing this down so I can tell Dee to reach out to Charlie.
When did Dee get to Chicago?
Dee was accepted to Northwestern's MFA program for film study.
Wow. And when did he move?
He moved in August.
Charlie does not know Dee's there, I guarantee you. So mamas are calling their sons off right after the call, like, oh my God.
Exactly.
That is so beautiful.
How long has Charlie been there?
Let's see, he moved in June 20. He's been there a couple years. So he went to school on the East Coast and then went to intern in Chicago and then moved to Chicago in 19 after did he graduate in 19? No, he high school in 19. He graduated college in 23. So he's been there 2 years. Yeah, he's working for JP Morgan Chase downtown and he's living his best life, being with his buds, watching sports. Yeah, that's.
Oh my God, I can't wait to tell Dee. Is downtown near South Michigan Ave?
Yeah, he's close. Charlie's in Lakeview, so the suburb over from that part of town. Yeah.
Our babies are in Chicago.
Isn't that wild? Oh my God. Not surprising. I mean, they're bros from their mothers. Like, we knew they were bros, like, for forever and ever. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad they're going to reconnect. They will love that. That'll bring such joy to Charlie's heart. I'm sure Dee too. So, and how fun we get to connect, huh?
I know.
Yeah.
And I am so, first of all, honored that you asked me onto your podcast.
Yeah, of course.
I tell you this every time I see you. I love you so much, Christy, and I appreciate you so much. And for those who don't know, our motherhood story is much bigger than just two mothers raising two boys. Like, you were really instrumental in supporting my motherhood, me to build my career as a single parent and that sort of thing. So I always look to you as an example of what it looks like to like not just live for you, but live for your community and pour into others around you and just extreme and kind of bold acts of kindness. You always showed me and my son, you and for.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Ferd and I were just talking about Dee the other day because he's I feel like a mama bear to your baby. Like I remember teaching him to ski. I forget how it came up. Ferd and I were talking about the time that we got to spend with Dee and just what a precious soul he is and how wonderful. And I think God works in mysterious ways. So I think people come into your world when you need somebody and you just needed somebody else. And I was happy. I had an only, you had an only. It worked out great for both of us. The boys could spend that much time together and that we were able to
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
them.
you guys were our village for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they love each other and I'm just so glad they're going to stay and connect again. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. But it takes one to know one. You also hold a broad, what's the word I want? You hold a broad swath for a lot of other mothers and women in our community as well. So yeah. So let's talk about you. So one of the things that we talk about is second chances. The theme is second chances. And my philosophy is every moment's a second chance. You find yourself in a moment or thinking or doing or being that does not work. It doesn't feel like it's working, then you get to choose again. And I just, that's how I changed my life. That's how I've moved through my life, right? And it happens every single day still. Every single day I get to choose again. Right? That new thought. But for you, I'm sorry. I know you just lost your grandmother back in Harlem, and I'm really just want to offer my condolences because I know what a gem and beautiful your tribute to her was, just beautiful. But let's kind of start with your beginnings because, tell us about your beginnings. I just think it's remarkable. You grew up in.
Yeah, so I grew up in New York City, in Harlem, New York, partially the Bronx as well. And beginnings pretty humble, had a really supportive grandmother and aunt, but definitely dealt with a lot with being the child of an addict. So in midlife, like mid-childhood around age 9 or so, was given to my grandmother to be raised. But between the time that I stopped living with my mother and I lived with my grandmother, I was kind of just on the streets of Harlem and not homeless. I always like to make sure I paint the picture accurately. I had places I could go, but when you're young and a child and you're out there, I just was free to kind of roam. So me and my sisters had a good couple of years where that was the case. And it was in the heart of the crack cocaine epidemic in Harlem. And the war on drugs that was happening at that time. And so I literally ran with a group of kids that all of our parents were addicts and crack addicted. Every last one of them that I remember or have had any contact with, all of their parents died from the addiction. Mine did not. Part of the reason is because my mother eventually moved to Denver and cleaned herself up and then sent for us. And that's how I got to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to Colorado, it was just sort of obviously culture shock.
Culture shock, right? Hit me
So
in the hip. I haven't heard that in a long time. Sorry. I'll date myself. I remember that.
it's so like this is, it was definitely extreme culture shock, but it changed my life for the better in a lot of ways. And ended up going to school here at CU Denver, while at CU Denver having my son. And gosh, that's my beginnings. I will start there because
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack that is not going to happen in this podcast.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
you can kind of pull all of the things from
Yeah.
like if you lived here and you went through that, I bet it's attached to these experiences, these
Of course.
liabilities, these assets, these traumas, these growth areas.
Right. Right. I get it. That's why I wrote my book because I wanted to share my experiences so people knew they weren't alone in it. And I can tell you, doing these podcasts has been so humbling for me because of the powerful women that I'm interviewing, from the head of the United Way to the head of the Women's Chamber to, head of Denver Health. Every single person has some level of trauma, and that background story, that is a thread of their leadership, is the thread of their, and I wouldn't be who I am today had I not had all of those experiences. And I know you would say the same. You wouldn't be who you are and doing what you do in the community without all the experiences that you had to have to be able to get you here now.
Yeah.
I
I
think
try to give you the toolkit, doesn't he?
it does indeed. And I like to say, I serve from my wounds because that's how I've healed myself, right? I've taken those challenges and made those into opportunities to return and to give back. So it's beautiful. And yeah, I can't even imagine. And I, being young and an adult in New York City in my early 20s, can't even juxtapose in my brain what it'd be like to be a kid in the Bronx and Harlem and then move to Denver in those times. That had to have been such a reality shock. Like, whoa. Because we were Cowtown back then when you got here, right?
Yes, it was like a going joke when I was on my way headed this way. Everybody was like, they don't even have street lights.
Yeah, I was from Kansas, and the big joke from my side was, "Do you have cows in your backyard?" I'm like, "Yeah, some places we do." Anyway, well, amazing. So you went on to get your education at CU Denver, right? And what did you study? I forgot.
A lot of deep work around Native American politics and political systems and colonization and all that.
And if I remember right, and please correct me if I'm making stuff up, but I feel like we had the conversation that you grew up in a culture that was very like because of your culture, because of your mama, because of your grandmother, right? There was a whole part of you that just valued the African American culture. And like, I'm wondering if that was also a thread to your education and looking at the systems of what you studied in college, or did that come later?
So, yeah, absolutely. My bloodline, my culture, who I am, my racial background, the diaspora that I'm a part of is deeply a part of my identity, my assignment, who I serve, how I show up every day, proudly and
Yeah.
unapologetically. But when I went to CU Denver, I had always wanted to go to an HBCU, and that did not happen. So I went to CU Denver, and I thought that I had lost the opportunity to study racial justice and social justice in the ways that you would experience at an HBCU. And I did.
Mhm.
However, I will say that studying under Glenn Morris, who runs the Fourth World Center there, actually, I don't know if he still does, but he used to run the Fourth World Center there.
Mhm.
And studying indigenous political systems was just a really beautiful way to unpack this country's sicknesses and
Yeah.
on marginalized peoples
Yeah.
and how it impacts my people. And so after that, I kind of was like, I learned so much about different tribes and different indigenous systems and beliefs that I wanted to find my own roots in that way. And I went on to study and got in embraced African spiritual studies and like Yoruba and that sort of thing. And so in doing all of that work, it kind of led me to a version of that history and culture from my
Yeah,
roots.
I think that's what I'm remembering is that period of time in your life when that was, I just remember that being just a part of your culture. I think I was either I wasn't in graduate school because I'd already graduated, but I think I was a social worker at the time. So you and I had kind of that social justice bent of like, anyway, well, beautiful. And you've done so much with that culture and your culture and what you're bringing through your business. But before we get there, let's talk about the journey to get there. So after you left CU, Denver, where did you go?
I went and I opened up a day spa. I had been doing nails to put myself through school and at Cherry Creek Spas, Antoine Duche
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that at the time they were bigger than they are now.
Hmm.
And decided to launch my own kind of small day spa. And we had gotten this space in Cherry Creek, a little tiny space, before we just kind of lucked out on that in terms of the space costs and all that stuff. And my sister and I, we launched a day spa. And so it was my first business that I had ever run. I was 23, 24. Dee was a baby
Hmm.
and I had finished school and did that for a few years. And eventually, and a large part of why I was so okay with going and opening my own businesses was two reasons. I had already worked at the SBA under Patricia Barella Rivera for several years, and she became a mentor and a friend. And so I felt like I'd always had this kind of interest in entrepreneurship from even my early roots in Harlem.
Hmm.
And then secondly, I was quick to open my own business because at the time, the capital was not the majority and the governor were not Democrats, and I'm a Democrat. And so I was like, well, I'll go do this over here since I have this political science degree, but there's really not any jobs or anything. And so when that switched over and you had that big blue turn here in Colorado, I went back to do that work at the Capitol and Worked for three Senate presidents in a row. The first was the first woman Senate president, I believe, Joan Fitzgerald. And then the second was the first Black Senate president, which was Peter Groff. And the third was Brandon Schaefer. And so I worked for the three of them before leaving and moving to DC to do more political work. And I think you might remember that time, or was D already?
Well, you were appointed, weren't you, to go to DC?
No,
No,
no.
you weren't put in appointing. No,
Peter was
Peter
an
was,
appointee
and
for
you went
all.
to work for. I read that's what. Okay, I remember that now. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's in my
And,
brain. Like,
yeah. And
I remember that.
yeah. And so he actually he was appointed and that's why he went there, but he very quickly took over the CEO role at a nonprofit that was doing ed reform work in DC. And that's when I went to work for him. So I didn't go work for the Obama administration. So he appointed me to the South. So I worked in Mississippi, Kentucky, Alabama, and Virginia on ed reform. So these are some of the states with the lowest performance in the country in education and some of the most deeply rooted, entrenched systems in white supremacy and racism. And I was down there with Ben Chavis, who used to be the president of the NAACP, and he actually walked with Martin Luther King. And he and I were partnered up and drove down through the South together. And it was quite the experience.
I bet it was.
It was quite the experience. A couple of times they were like, after I would get off the mic in the rooms, they were like, we should get you out of here. We should get you on a plane. It was, and I didn't even know that that level of hostility and danger existed because I grew up in New York.
Mm-hmm.
To being able to speak to the highest levels of my voice as loud as I wanted to about injustice. And so to be in a space where it just felt like a time warp doing that work down there, but I was very much up for it. And yeah, so that was the work I did. Eventually, I went to work for DPS and started their innovation lab there, and then ended up getting fired from there. It was my first time ever getting fired from a job. Got fired from my first six-figure job and left that job and ran for school board a couple of weeks after they fired me, and then didn't get that. It was a vacant seat and didn't get that. And thank God.
Oh, yeah.
But it was more of a statement. I just wanted to say some things that I said during the campaign that I needed to get out anyway. And I felt really good about doing that publicly. And then went and came home, was like really depressed, really feeling a way about myself, embarrassed. And took some time to figure out what I was going to do. And I remember sitting in the living room with D because I had just purchased my first home with D. And he was like, we're going to figure it out, Mom. We're going to figure it out. And within 6 months, I had launched my consulting firm, landed my first six-figure contract, and I've never made less than what they paid me since then. And more importantly, I was not only able to do impactful work, because I always feel like I've always been able to do impactful work, but I've been able to do impactful work with a lot of freedom and autonomy to tackle systems and dismantle systems that I believe contribute to the very injustices that I experienced, that my ancestors experienced.
I love that. That's what I love about you. You are so true. You are so true and authentic to who you are. And I've always admired, I have chills and I want to cry because it's like you see it in people, and I get to see it a lot because I witness a lot of people. But Makisha, your steadfastness and your belief and in your culture and in women, and like it is bar none powerful, beyond powerful. And that's just a small, I don't even know how to other way to articulate that other than that. Beautiful. So when you came back and you started to launch your own consulting firm, is it that Sistah Biz, or was that the consulting firm you had before you started Sistah Biz?
The consulting firm before I started
Okay.
Sistah, I called it Pivot Innovations. As part of the feedback I would get at DPS was I pivoted too fast when things were not right, and it was hard for everyone to jump on board. So I named my business Pivot. And so yeah, that was that. And because it was doing so well, that's when I started getting calls from other women, all Black women, who were like, can I have coffee? I heard what you did. First of all, I heard what you went through. I'm going through something similar. And it was a little bit crazy because I got invited to this meeting and there were like 30 Black people at the table, educators. And all of them had been either terminated or were being harassed. And they all got the same kind of push out deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they were discussing, so it was the first time we had all come together to say, did they do that to you? And I was angry. So that's why I ran for school board. I was like, this is crazy. when I got to my space and I was doing well, and I ended up landing a contract with the city. I was doing things with the mayor. Other people had saw that. And so they started calling me and reaching out to me like, can we have coffee? Can we talk? And they were one-on-ones, which I'm better with one-on-ones than I am like big group stuff. I prefer it, I should say. And I connect with people on a one-on-one basis a lot better. And we would have coffee and they would tell me the same story. I mean, it couldn't be more identical in terms of their experience of injustice and their experience of harassment and systemic oppression. And they would be crying and it would be emotional. And I remember this one woman, when I was talking to her, she wanted to get my support in helping her think through how she was going to sue her organization and blah, blah, blah. And I said, listen, you can do that. You can go get an attorney and you can do all of that. But I would really like for you to prioritize your peace and your wellness and your health. And I want you to know that even when you get that money, you're still going to have that trauma. And you're going to have to learn how to forgive people who aren't sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Not for them, for you. And she was just bawling when I said that. Like, and she knew it was true in her heart, I believe, that no matter how wrong they are, this is about you, and this is about your second chance, and this is about you figuring out what's next for you and why this happened to you and how you're going to make lemonade, baby.
That's right. And how do you get out of the reactive state? You know, I work with roots in my system and my coursework, right? Because that reactive tendency to be the victim of what happens to you is one of the lowest pinnacle of like energy vibration there is, right? So you're teaching and coaching, and you knew that, right? Because you overcame it too. But to move out of it and realize that you're not ever the victim of, right? You get to choose how you're going to respond to your life.
That I think it's important to decide to do those things. Sometimes you have a social justice assignment, and your job is to go tackle a system and to find justice in a situation.
Yep.
But you got to separate that from revenge
Yep.
and finding a way to, out of the powerlessness you feel
That's
that's
right.
not healthy. There are healthy ways to take back your power, and you just got to make sure that whatever your decision is, whatever that looks like, it's the
Right.
healthy way to take back your power.
That's right. That's where the energy is. You can't come from a victim standpoint because victimhood will take you into martyrdom. It'll take you down a rabbit hole that none of us really want to get. We get into, but it's anyway.
Have you read that
Don't
book,
make it on the pulpit.
Mission?
What is it?
Hero on a Mission?
No, I haven't. I have to write it down.
The book that I had the entire Sistah Biz network read, and it was about the hero's journey. And he talks about the four roles you can play. You can play the hero, you can play the victim, you can play the villain, or you can play the guide.
Yep.
And I think the book is about the hero, but he says he eventually gets to the kind of place where he's like, this book is about like how the ultimate achievement is the guide. And the guide is the person that has been through so much and come through so much that now the hero has, you find heroes that need you, that you can guide through their journey. And we read that. But it's all a choice. All those roles are choices. You select.
And the other part of that is you have to be conscious enough to do so. And we need people like you and me that are in places where we can help people see the forest from the trees, because so many of us live in a place. I lived in denial for a long, long time. I loved martyrdom. I thought that, I was a victim of everything that happened, everything, and it wasn't until I started to realize that I had the power over that I could, that's the story I was telling myself, change the story. I'm not a victim of anything. I have the power to choose how I want my life to be, how to change my thoughts, who do I want to surround myself with, who am I going to call, ask for help, all of those things. So I love the hero's journey, first of all. And I wrote that down, Hero on a Mission. Of course, I will peruse it myself. All right. So you have the consulting company, you're talking to all these people that have had the same experience, and you're seeing the pattern, right? You're recognizing there's a pattern here, and knowing you, all of a sudden you're like, oh, here's an idea.
So they actually started asking me to help them do what I did, which is get my consulting firm off the ground, get my service business off the ground. I've always wanted to launch this bakery, help me get this off the ground because I saw you do it. And so I started helping like 3 or 4 people out of this office right here, my home office, and they started telling their friends. And so then I was like at 15 women, and I invited them all over to my house, and we're in the living room, and we're all talking and talking about how we should organize as a community of founders, because now they are all up and running with their businesses, and kind of started Sistah Biz. And there was like this one night I remember I do graphic facilitation, so I had a poster from one end of the room to the other. Got up and everybody that knows me knows I go to bed at 9 o'clock every night. So this means something when I say I was up at like midnight. I just got inspired by what Sistah Biz could look like, what cities it would be in, what programs it would run. And I just couldn't stop writing from one end of the wall to the other end of the wall. And it just poured out. And I looked up, I was like a little bit of a mad woman. And I looked up and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, this is a thing. This is going to happen. And yeah, that's how it got started.
I call that divine download. Divine download. It just comes in and yeah, beautiful. Well, explain Sistah Biz in plain terms. Like, how do you explain Sistah Biz?
But now Sistah Biz has been around for 10 years. So Sistah Biz has had a life cycle of it's been many things. But what it is right now and what it started as, let's go there, was just me gathering a group of Black women who I was providing business coaching services to. And the coaching led to group programming and trainings. And the group trainings and programs led to, me learning and understanding just how big the resource gap was for Black women and starting to fight for resources there, launching a loan fund, launching a grant fund called Unstoppable, making sure that they had technical assistance, accounting services, and legal services and HR services to accompany their journey, and providing it in a nonprofit format because the average Black woman's business is bringing in about 24K a year. And so they definitely, certainly didn't have the resources to grow, much less scale. So that's how Sistah Biz started. Over the years, we've kind of gotten to a place where, one, I'm burned out. And we get to the part where we talk about my second chance,
We're getting there.
This will lay context for the fact that it's in a very different space now for something different for myself. I've poured myself just kind of almost sacrificially into this network and into this work for 10 years and built a beautiful community it's like an authentic community of women who are together in many ways, even outside of the programming. Every time I speak to a Sistah Biz member, I hear that she's connected to another Sistah Biz member or group of Sistah Biz members that I didn't even know that she knew or was connected to, and for things well outside of business. Either they're talking like seriously like mergers and collaborations, all the way to prayer groups and spending Christmas together and traveling together. And so the network that has turned into for them, and the support system and the love and the sisterhood that has been built, is just beautiful. And I feel super blessed that God chose me to work on that.
How many women do you think, women of color, do you think you have impacted through this work? Estimate.
I would say we've probably done somewhere around, at this point, we're at about 2,500 free coaching calls. So if I were to narrow that down to how many women, maybe like 800 or 900 women.
And how many businesses do you think have been started and or sustained because of the sisterhood?
Same amount, but we don't do startup. So that first group that I started with, those women that I told you about, we helped them start, but I didn't go on to create. I was working more with women who were already off the ground. But I would say, but that said, I have had a lot of women who have restarted their businesses or closed and found another product or service, or like they'll come in as one business and they'll leave out as another. We had a woman that's around town doing MC work. She didn't start off as an MC. She started off as a social media manager, but through the visioning and coaching and seeing who she was and how she moved, I could tell the joy she felt when she was on stage hosting an event. And we talked through that, and now she's like a really successful MC. And so like I've had a lot of that happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think the web is so beautiful because I know like you may have started this thing called Sistah Biz, but the reality is that the web went broad and deep and long, right? And so I asked the number just because I know the magnitude of it from just because I've known you and I've known you these years, but we don't know how deep and broad and wide this net has been, and so necessary. I mean, just so necessary and so important in these times, particularly. So God bless you and thank you for saying yes to the work that you've done. And I know what it takes to serve at this level. And when I asked you about some of the second chance points you had, the number one thing you said was your health, and that you've had to reposition yourself and your focus. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think growing up, I was never taught what it looked like try to achieve optimal health. I think I grew up being taught that survival was the goal.
That's right.
So you're taught like, so you don't make space to look at things like your mental health or to stop and look at like the things that are deteriorating your spirit or your body because you're just trying to get through. Like a friend sent me something on Instagram the other day. She was joking because it was talking about like the parents of like Gen Zers and what we had to go through. And she's like, in terms of like just dismissing of mental health. And I was like, that Pavlov's hierarchy of needs is real. Our parents were trying to make sure they could make sure that we could eat and that we were safe.
That's right.
And so I'm not going to pretend that like they were just like not capable of this. They were in a different space in a different time trying to stand on the shoulders of where they came from and get us to the next level. And now we carry the baton and we're able to advance that discussion and that body of work. And so, yeah, I think for sure my mental health was not something I learned about growing up or that would, and it was actually quite taboo to talk about therapy or mental health just in the I think globally and in the US. Maybe I can't speak globally, but in the US and in the communities I grew up with, quite taboo. And so for me, I went these past 10 years and quite frankly, most of my childhood, not knowing how my childhood really impacted me in these past couple of decades, like just as an adult, past couple few decades, not knowing and understanding the depth of like how my childhood impacted me. I would say I went through my early 20s not understanding that. When I got pregnant with D, I decided to get my first therapist because I knew there was a lot wrong with the relationship between me and his father. And so I decided, well, I want to unpack this because I don't want to bring him into a mess. And so I got a therapist, and that's when I learned about like the impacts of my childhood, being the child of an addict, growing up as a Black woman in Harlem, like all the things and what that looked like and how it was informing how I showed up in the relationships I was in. So I did get that. But what I didn't get early on was like, okay, I know the problem, but I don't have the tools.
Right.
So over the years, I've learned and grown and had help and support and education in creating tools for me to do things like emotionally regulate myself and manage trauma and recognize when it's showing up in my behaviors in my life and manage not just traumas because traumas refer back to previous wounds. There's still current injustice and things happening in my life that create new wounds or open up old ones.
Yeah, they
So
spiral. Yep.
yeah. And so what does it look like to recognize that happening and to respond from a healed place and from a place of having the tools to manage and decide and dissect and break down what's happening so that you can grow and heal and not let something take you down, but in fact, the opposite, let ascend from it. So yeah, I think when I learned that I wanted to do that and that I needed to do that more. It just has been a continuous journey over my 20s through now my 40s. I'm 49 now to do that work on myself. But in this past couple of years, I realized that I was a chronic overworker and decided to choose me for once. Decided that I needed to do that.
Yeah. I love what I read in your notes where it was your decision to connect back to self-love. Right. And at the heart of hearts, I'm a huge fan of Louise Hay. I don't know if you know her work. You can hear
Yes.
it. She says the number one issue that every single person ever that she's ever worked with, the number one thing people are looking for is that place back to themselves, that place of self-love. And I 100% and totally agree with it. And I don't know why it's such a difficult path. But I have a joke that says,
Notice it. I don't think you realize that when you don't choose you, it's an act against self-love. Like,
right.
you know what I mean? You don't even see it. And then when you see it, you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Now I'm
Right.
and you start to look inside.
Right. We make it selfish to say I'm putting myself first, or I can't say no because then I mean, yeah, trust me, the science behind it. A passive, people pleaser my entire life, like it about killed me. It really did. So I relate so much, and I so appreciate your bringing it to the table because alongside this Powerful Women series, I'm doing a whole individual topic on self-care and how
Mhm.
self-care is vital. Vital. We can't be who we are in the world, particularly in this VUCA world where it's so crazy and unexpected, and it's just we can't do it unless we put ourselves first.
You know what I don't think I knew? I wish I had known earlier, but I don't think that I knew. I always thought I had something to do. I came here to do it, whether it's take care of my son or walk in my purpose or reach the levels that I needed to reach to kind of break poverty cycles in my family and in my experience. I don't know that I ever felt like, I always felt like I would do those things and then I could rest.
Right.
Nobody told me like, girl, you're gonna wake up, you're gonna be 50 years old, you gonna rest, you should rest on the way.
Oxygen mask on first, right? There's a reason they say that. Put your own oxygen mask on first,
So
right?
you gotta live while you on the front line with the picket sign. You gotta find joy. You gotta work it in there. It's not, I'll do this and then I'll do that, because those systems are gonna be there when you die.
That's right. That's right. And the systems are always changing, but they're always there. And if it's not this thing today, it's going to be another thing tomorrow. So, yeah, the whole concept of this is an inner game. This isn't about the external anymore. And particularly at your age and my age, Makisha, my big joke is God gives us 50 or 60 years to figure it out. And if we don't figure it out, then we start getting these things like health crises and divorces and midlife crisis. I mean, it's like we are developed and designed to be able to operate at a place of awakening, of conscious awakening and awareness, right? Of ourselves, of our universe, of our source, of our community, of others, right? This is an awakening. It's not I'm going to get it done by God, and when it's done, then I can rest. It's not.
Yeah.
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 Thank you for bringing that. I love that. All right, we've talked about your company. We've talked about your health. Let's talk about your son and where you stand now in your mothering and the joy. You were just talking about joy. It makes my heart like, tell me like what it was like as a working mother and now that you have him grown and thriving. Like, what's that like?
I think this part of the conversation is the easiest part of the conversation for me and maybe the most boring because the story of me and Dee is just the greatest love story of my life.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And I don't, even when he was born, you know how sometimes people talk about the, postpartum or like I had problems, with having to get up in the middle of the night. And I never, ever, ever, ever felt that way. I just never felt that way. In the middle of the night, I would wake up just, I wanted to. I wanted to hold him. I wanted to be his mother. And I didn't want any more kids. Like I was just like, I just love this little baby, just me and this baby. And so I never had any other kids. It's just always been about Dee, and he's just the most amazing person, human being, and I learned so much from him. Even when he was young, I would learn from him. He was so chill, so the opposite of me. And he would hold the mirror up to me often and still does. And I'm just so grateful because I know a lot of Black women have lost their sons in this season and in this generation. And I just am so grateful. And I know the pain. I don't know, but I see the pain that women experience when their kids aren't doing well. And I never want that. And I never have had to deal with that in a major way or anything like that. And I'm just
Praise the Lord for that one because I feel the same way. Yeah, yeah. Well, he's a beautiful kid, and I can't believe he's in Chicago. It's so cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's pursuing acting and film, and I will say that's a scary industry to be in. So I will be, now that he's moving in that direction in a very real way, I will be setting myself up for momager mode because
mhm.
uh, make sure he has the support system he needs to do
Yeah,
this.
I'm on your team if you need anything, if I can help in any way. All right, welcome back, Makisha. Wow, I missed you. I see you, I know you. Like every time we see each other, we're just like, but it's so nice just to sit down and have the conversation and have the real conversation with you that a lot of times that we don't get because of our crazy schedules in life. So again, thank you for bringing you to this podcast. We're going to have a little bit of fun, but before I jump into that, are there any other awarenesses that you have about second chances that you want to share with the audience? Anything else
I
that
feel that at 49, I am very, very much committed. I'm like, I kind of feel like I kind of did a lot of stupid stuff. Like I did a lot of stupid shit
what? Yeah.
up to now. And so I feel really good about the fact that like, okay, I figured it out. Now I want the second half to be everything. Now I feel more prepared to just really take complete, have that power and that intentionality behind creating the life I want in this second.
It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So I hope you look those desires in their eye and know they're yours, right? That's what life's about. It's just to know we're meant to live joy to joy. We're meant to live. I sometimes feel embarrassed or like, I don't know, bad. I don't know what the word is about the life that I live. And then of late, I'm like, you know what? It's my life. And the only thing I can live in now is gratitude because it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool what I get to do and who I get to do it with. So
We're all on assignment.
it's
Like
right.
we're all on everybody has their assignment and everybody's assignment has amazing things about it and has some really crappy things sometimes about it. But we're all on assignment. So
So I love to do some rapid fire questions, just some fun stuff. Okay. What's one word that describes your life right now?
peaceful.
If you had to give yourself a pep talk in 5 words or less, what would it be?
Girl, you got this.
You do, you got it. One daily ritual that helps you feel grounded.
Meditation.
Who's taught you the most about second chances?
Who's talking the most?
Who has taught you the most?
Wow. My mother.
What's the biggest lie that businesswomen tell themselves?
Oh, that's good. I know this is supposed to be rapid fire.
Okay.
Maybe that they are not bringing their baggage into their business.
We bring our whole selves into our business, whether we want to or not. And last one, what is your best place to decompress?
Double Dutch Saturdays.
What? What's that?
I jumped double Dutch on Saturdays.
You do not. Really?
I jumped competitively when I was little. And so remember I told you I'm on this joy fest. I'm on this joy journey right now. And so my therapist is like, I need you to do some shit that like is just for fun. Like thing on like and it would be great if you could do some stuff that you just suck at and just lean into it. And so I was like, okay. And so I did start
That's like the square jump rope and you go in between them, or are you doing 2 jump ropes? My God, that brings back memories.
So there's this group called the 40 Plus Double Dutchers, and they have chapters all over the country. They have a Denver chapter, and every Saturday we get together, all 40 plus. There's a lady that's 68. There's a lady that's 72. We're all 40 and up, and we jump double dutch every Saturday.
It's so cool. I'm gonna have to get on a sidebar and figure out where you are. I gotta come watch.
Yes, we're right over by you.
Oh, that's so funny. I love that. All right, Double Dutch Saturday. That's a new one on me. All right, Makisha, how can the guests get to know more about you, Sister Biz? Any handles, any websites you want to share with the audience so they can go in the notes?
Yep. So it's Sistah, not sister. STAH.biz, and all my handles are at Sistah Biz.
Sister Biz. Okay, beautiful. I'm just going to tell you I love you. I
I
really
love you
do.
too,
And I appreciate you. And this was a blast. I just loved connecting with you again.
We got to connect our boys now that we know they're in the
I'm
same.
doing it right now. I'm calling him. Middle of his work day. He's gonna be mad at me, but I'm like, Dee's in Chicago. Yeah, text me, Dee's. Has his phone number changed? Charlie has his old one, unless he's changed it. Do you know?
It's the same.
Charlie's is the same too. So we'll just let him know. Yeah, they can find each other. Oh,
All right. Love you.
thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.